All right, so in this video, we'll start talking about layout. We'll be using CSS Grid, and by that, I don't mean grid frameworks like Bootstrap or Skeleton, and I don't even mean Flexbox. We're talking about the CSS Grid standard that's built into all modern browsers, and it's really powerful. You don't need any third-party tools or frameworks. It will allow you to do complex stuff with a little bit less effort, and we'll get right into it.
But so we talked about this before. The reason you're not using Bootstrap is because Bootstrap has a ton of other things that your application doesn't really need or doesn't necessarily need.
Yeah, so Bootstrap is more than just layout, but many people, even when they're building a site and they're not using any Bootstrap components, start putting Bootstrap in because they're not real familiar with the CSS concepts to achieve the layout they want. You can do this with, I mean, you can always do it with pure CSS. Arguably, in older days, it was a lot hackier. So you use things like floats, and then you'd have to have the clear fix to clear it after the last one in a row. It was just a mess, and browsers were completely different. And then Flexbox came along, and then more recently, CSS Grid came along. Now, things like Bootstrap, I believe, is still implemented in Flexbox. CSS Grid is newer than Flexbox, and corrects for some of the things that were inherent in the design of Flexbox. So let's get at it.
The bottom line is that we're working with just a much more simple start, right? Just use the stuff that we need.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's already there in your browser and easy to use, it's a nice way to do things, right?
Makes
and CSS Grid is. So if we look at a few arbitrary layouts here, so take this first layout, which is, say, a 3-column layout. The next one, which is 2 columns, one being wider than the other. And then the designer throws something at that, and you put your face in your hands and cry, right? It needn't be so. So let's take a look at it, shall we? We'll make a CSS Grid layout. I'm going to create a component, which we're going to display on the page. And so let's start in this. We're going to put it in the body section here. So in our app.js, we've still got this, you know what, let's lose the padding. And how about we just leave it as body? So we're going to display a grid component here to illustrate what I'm talking about. So I'll make a new component, and let's make a grid example. And underneath grid example, okay, so we'll export default grid example. Let's return some JSX. And then in app.js, oops, grid, come on, give me some help. There we are. All right. Error because we haven't used it yet. No, for that matter, why don't we make it atomic? Stating the obvious for most, but in CSS, a dot is the dot's like for a class name, and a hash or a pound sign is for an ID. So if I say div class equals grid example, a dot matches that. Sorry, I didn't say that earlier. in index CSS, we've got our variables. Let's do the C3 dark charcoal, shall we? Okay, and
So
I'm not
from a
going to.
layout standpoint, what you're doing here is you're creating a div that you're then going to put some components on top of.
Yeah, inside as children to it.
Okay.
In app.js, I'm actually going to.
Get rid of that.
Yeah, I can. Let's just lose it altogether. Okay, so inline in your JSX, curlies denote a block of pure script, and inside that I can do multi-line JavaScript comments. And grid examples defined but never used. So let's change that, shall we? Grid example. And just before I hit save, so we're going to have a div class equals grid example h1. That's going to be dark on dark. It won't be very visible, but we're going somewhere with this. So let's save it. Okay, so there's a div. The background color didn't work. What
Didn't
happened
pick
there?
it up. Oh, because you didn't inherit the
I didn't
CSS
import it.
into the component.
There you are. Hey, how about that? Can't see a thing, but that's okay. Let's give it a default color, right? I'll do one better. I'm going to leave this color dark. I'll show you why. We're going to put some boxes inside it. That would be the default, but let's be explicit. I'm going to make 6 boxes. And we need some light enough colors we can see stuff on it. In our brand guide, we can use the medium charcoal. You know what? Let's just use some CSS colors. So I'm on Mac, Command Shift P. There's a different shortcut on Windows, but I have the color picker installed. Takes a minute to load. I presume it's trying. And it came up on my other screen. Darn it. Okay. Let's just pick some light-ish colors, so that'll work. Won't be pretty, but it'll get our point across. Here we are. This is the built-in color picker. Beggars can't be choosers. I'm really worried more about expediency here. Oh, I picked an RGB color. Another way to express it, you can use hex or RGB. And RGBA adds an alpha channel, so that's the other way that we often pick colors here.
We need a lemon in there now.
Is there a named color lemon?
Let's try.
There's yellow or green yellow.
Sure.
That's gonna be too close to the other one I picked, isn't it? Let's do yellow. Lemon to go with the salmon.
Exactly.
All right. And then I don't have anything in the reds too much to it. Let's pick like a lighter red. There we go, like a gray red. Thank you. There we are. All right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like I got an extra curly. Cool, done. We already imported grid example. Now what we'll do is class name, right, equals 1. And let's make some common
some
spells.
padding in there, hey?
Okay, and in grid example, div class name equal, what am I doing here? Make a fool out of me, Graham. Div class name equals 1, 1. It's in grid example CSS. Background color white. Oh, you know.
Black. There we go.
Hot reload made a fool out of me, didn't it? Okay, what do we got here? We got 1. And in 1, I'm silly.
Take
What I
that out.
meant to say was color dark charcoal, not background color. Just goes to show you last one wins, right? You know that, right? Last one wins with CSS.
Yeah.
So you can have 2 lines right below each other. You can have multiple style sheets. And there's precedence going from the user agent style sheet built in through everything else you're bringing. Okay, so all they do is stack because we didn't tell them to do anything but stack. Let's go ahead and add one more to this example. And let's make a 3. Okay, nothing surprising. We got 1, 2, 3 vertically stacked. And what's important here, if I bring up the developer tools, the display will be block on these because they're block level elements and because we didn't tell it to do otherwise, right? So if I look in, I expand the root div, expand the app div, get into grid example, I got 1, 2, 3, they're all display block. And what we'll do next is we will convert them to be CSS Grid, and that will allow us to change the layout. So this is a good stopping point, and we'll continue.